Now we got a few folks coming in, so we're just going to hold on just a moment here as we have some additional folks joining us. But we're so glad that you can join us today. This event is part of the AIA TEXO subcommittee. It's made up of members from both AIA as well as TEXO. John Mindrup is our chair for this year. And on behalf of him, he and I both, and the group, we thank you so much for your participation today. And as we get started, one of the things we wanted to talk about is just the exciting things that we got going on this year. This AIA TEXO group has been very engaged with not only looking at this particular event, but as you may be aware, we've been involved with the Economic Forum that happens in January. We're excited that that is already set for January of 22. And so the next thing up, Bark and Build is going to be upon us. And again, that's a great collaboration between our architects and engineers. So start looking out for who your partners are going to be. June 10th, you'll start to see that opening up. So we want you to be engaged with Bark and Build. Again, collaborative strategies for our architects and engineers to work together. And then Technology Roundtable. It's gone really, really well for us to really focus on those things that are affecting us on our projects and opportunities to continue to collaborate. On the 22nd of July, we're going to be talking about WELL and FitWell and how that accreditation process works for buildings that you're involved with. And then we're actually talking about a face-to-face meeting in September with the Technology Roundtable, so stay tuned there. And then really what we also want to try to encourage is more YC and YPP engagement, and I'm sorry, YCC and YP engagement, but that's a call out for all of us to help grow our community and get more architects and engineers engaged in what we're doing. So again, we thank you for your participation. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and get things started. I'm sure there'll be more folks coming in, but again, thank you for your participation. And right now, we'll turn it over to Joe Oyler of the Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we'll get things kicked off.
All right, well, thank you, Charlie, and good afternoon, everyone. As Charlie mentioned, I'm Joe Oyler, Managing Director of Public Policy of the Dallas Regional Chamber. It's great to be with you all today. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of today's discussion and share some insight and kind of a brief overview of what we've seen so far in the 87th Texas legislative session. At the DRC, our staff of 50 people work every day to make the Dallas region the best place in the U.S. For all people to live, work, and do business. And one way that we do that is focus on matters of public policy that impact your quality of life. We work closely with elected officials at every level of government, from local city halls to the halls of the Capitol in Austin and in Washington, D.C. as well. So, I'll start off quickly with an overview of the session thus far. So we've seen roughly 390 bills and joint resolutions in each chamber passed so far. About 7 have passed both chambers, and I think the last I checked, 3 bills so far have been sent to the governor for his signature. That number may have changed in the past 24 or 48 hours, but there are about 32 days left in the session. And with this session getting off to a slow start, because of the pandemic, it's definitely going to be a sprint. I think, and Jack and Becky would probably agree with me there, to the finish line. A lot of items that we're looking to push across and get on the governor's desk for signature. When this session began, we thought really what we were going to see is a budget, some redistricting, obviously with the new census numbers coming in response to the pandemic. And then after the events in February with the winter storm, it definitely threw a curveball at this session for sure. And I think in some ways, Winter Storm Uri really kicked this session into gear. Lawmakers made quick work of the energy crisis, holding hearings and passing bills to address the outages within 6 weeks of the storms. I mentioned that because energy is a big issue that the DRC is paying close attention to. And this is legislation, that's going to impact, not only AIA, Texo, DRC members, but really statewide and how we look at economic development in the future, and continue to attract more businesses. The legislation thus far, energy legislation that is, mandates some level of equipment weatherization, improves coordination between state agencies during emergencies. On the House, the storm response has been divided across a few bills, all of which have been approved by the House. We're paying close attention to House Bill 11, which would require utilities, power plants, and transmission services to maintain service quality and reliability during extreme weather events and make reasonable efforts to prevent interruptions of service. House Bill 12 and 13 are two other bills we're paying close attention to, which look to improve communication and coordination between government agencies during disasters. House Bill 16. So I'm sure some of you on this call have heard of the company or energy wholesaler Griddy recently. It's made headlines for some of these astronomical energy bills that consumers were having to pay following the events in February. So this bill would ban offering of wholesale index products to residential customers. And lastly, on the House side, in terms of energy, House Bill 17, which would stop local governments from banning a particular energy source. So Dallas Regional Chamber is very supportive of an all fuels approach to energy in the state. We've seen a lot of issues kind of continue to evolve as more and more information comes through from the legislature on energy. On the Senate side, Senate Bill 3, which is kind of all encompassing, incorporates all these items that I just mentioned. Senator Schwartzer's bill, Shortner's bill, has been passed in the Senate and has been referred to the House awaiting hearing. Some other regional issues that we're tracking closely that would have an impact on AIA and Texo members. Upskilling. So upskilling the workforce, that's what upskilling is really finding a better alignment of Texas degree and credential programs to help meet employer demands as the job market continues to kind of evolve and expand in the region and throughout the state. So expanding reskilling and upskilling programs for current workers and applicants, and strengthen support services to ensure that more students and employees complete effective programs that will, elevate their career prospects. So the two bills that we're paying close attention to here are Senate Bill 1102 and House Bill 303. So these would amend the education code to establish the Texas Reskilling and Upskilling through Education. So it's being referred to as the TRUE program. So this would strengthen the Texas workforce and build a stronger Texas economy. The bill would require the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to administer the program and to award grants under the program beginning in fall 21 semester. So these funds would be appropriated or otherwise available for that purpose to eligible institutions to create, redesign, and expand workforce training programs and deliver education and workforce training that leads to post-secondary industry certifications or workforce credentials required for high demand occupations. Senate Bill 1102 was unanimously passed in the Senate on April 22nd. And on the 26th, it was referred to the Higher Education Committee. So if passed and signed into law, this would support reskilling and upskilling programs at junior and technical colleges, leading to a better alignment of the region's education institutions and our growing workforce. I wanted to provide some updates on some infrastructure related bills that we're paying close attention to. And the DRC is supportive of protecting our local transportation priorities, policies and funding sources, maintaining all current project delivery tools to continue to allow for that innovative infrastructure financing we've seen in the state. We're also supportive of Texas high-speed rail. So in terms of infrastructure financing, paying close attention to House Bill 4420. So this bill would require the comptroller in conjunction with the Water Development Board and Department of Transportation to conduct a study on the feasibility of P3s, so public-private partnerships related to the state water plan projects and road projects. So this would be set aside for projects with an estimated project value of over $1 billion. So Representative Kraus, who's introduced this bill, said, this is, and we agree that this is needed to find really a better way to pay for some of the infrastructure needs in the region and in the state, as we continue to see rapid growth of population and continue to attract more businesses to the state. House Bill 2905 is another one that we're paying close attention to. So this would amend the water code to allow public-private partnerships in the implementation of projects awarded financial assistance from several different funds and accounts administered by the Texas Water Development Board. And then two other bills really kind of closely related are House Bill 3159 and 3160. And these pertain to TxDOT and the Regional Mobility Authority comprehensive development agreements. So this includes and authorizes TxDOT to enter into a CDA for specific highway projects. That's House Bill 3159. 3160 authorizes TxDOT to enter into CDA with a private entity for development, design, construction, repairs, extension and expansion of toll projects and state highway improvements for tolled and non-tolled lanes. So we're talking projects like, Highway 121 to I-35 East in Dallas County, I-35 East to Highway 67 Southern Gateway project. And then lastly, Senate Bill 402. So this was introduced by Senator Nathan Johnson, and this would permit cities that utilize a municipal street sales tax to renew that tax for either 8 to 10 years if the majority of voters voting in each of the last 2 consecutive elections approved its adoption for reauthorization. This historically, we've seen this tax set aside, or a portion of this sales tax set aside for street improvements. Sidewalks were later added to that. And now it incorporates water infrastructure under roadways as a part of some of these projects. So Senate Bill 1, so that's our budget. We're paying close attention to the transportation funding that's been set aside there. So it's the state's $246 billion budget for the 22-23 biennium. This is headed to conference committee now. And we actually have 2 North Texas delegation members that will be serving on that conference committee. So it's Senate Finance Chair Senator Jane Nelson from Senate District 12 and House Appropriations Article 2 Chair Representative Gio Capriglione from House District 98. Another priority item for the Dallas Regional Chamber this session is the reauthorization of Chapter 313. So it's a Texas Economic Development Act. So it's Chapter 313 of the tax code. And what 313 is, for folks on the line that are unfamiliar with it, it allows school districts to attract new major industrial development projects by offering a temporary and limited tax discount against a portion of their school property tax bill. So this limited discounts are a tool in our region's tool, really the state's toolbox, to continue to attract businesses to the state. Historically, Chapter 313 has successfully attracted new projects to Texas without raising taxes on existing property, and led to thousands of new manufacturing jobs, with more jobs coming in the next few years. And this really helps to make sure Texas continues to be that #1 state in the country in terms of economic growth. Chapter 313 is currently set to expire in 2022. And we strongly believe that this needs to be renewed by the 21 or the current legislative session, really for Texas to remain competitive with other states. Other states offer incentives like these, and Texas would really lose a competitive edge in attracting investments if this portion of the tax code is sunset. And some context here, Texas property taxes on industrial projects are fourth highest of any state, 61% higher than the national average. And Chapter 313 helps bring it down to a national average. There's two bills that we're paying close attention to here and are supportive of. And the first is House Bill 1556. It was introduced by Chairman Jim Murphy. So this bill would renew Chapter 313 for 10 years, protects all existing 313 agreements, streamlines the application and reporting procedures, and keeps the job creation requirement in the current law. This bill was reported favorably as substituted from House Ways and Means on the 28th this week. And another bill that was also reported favorably as substituted from the same committee on the same day is House Bill 4242, and that's Chairman Morgan Meyer's bill, which is just a simple 2-year extension of the Chapter 313 program. So that's kind of a quick overview of the regional issues that we're tracking closely that have an impact on AIA and Texo and really some of the regional growth that we're pushing so hard for. So now I'd like to turn it over and introduce our speakers today. So first we'll hear from Jack Baxley with Texo, the Construction Association. Jack is Vice President of Government Affairs at Texo, and he served in this capacity for 24 years. After Jack, we'll hear from Becky Walker. Becky serves as Government Relations Director for the Texas Society of Architects. She previously served for 6 years as Legislative and Communications Director for the Texas Senate. And then last and certainly not least, we'll hear from Katie O'Brien at the end of the program. So with that, I'll kick things over to Jack. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you could join us this afternoon. It has been an interesting legislative session so far. We knew it would be with the COVID related situation. Then compiled right on top of that was the freeze. So, and you talk about curveballs being thrown at you. In our case, since we are the Texas Building Branch AGC, as well as the ABC of Texas, our ABC of Texas president was basically asked by the governor to join the Public Utilities Commission, and with his in-depth knowledge of the electrical issues in that industry, Will McAdams made the decision to step down and take that position on onto the PUC, and the Senate approved his serving a 4-year term. That was about 2 weeks ago. So in the meantime, we're not hiring an executive to fulfill his spot, but we have hired 2 contract lobbyists that I've worked with for several years, and that's Wade Long and Joe Garcia. Both of them are well respected in both the House and Senate, and will do an excellent job for us. They know the issues. The issues are not new to them because they've worked with us through the TVB AGC also. So things are still moving forward, and everything's moving forward rather quickly now. Yes, there was a little scandal. If you're in Austin, you hear it in the news quite a bit. It really hasn't come up to the North Texas area as much, but there's an investigation going on. Allegedly, there's a situation where a lobbyist had roofied a member staffer. So that is going on, and that has been brought to the House floor, and they're addressing those issues. So to what extent that could slow this process down, it's still to be seen, but a terrible situation. And I feel as though they're addressing it head on. So we'll see where that comes out, but that's going on. The other one that we're anticipating watching out for is, and Joe didn't mention it, but these election and voting new laws that some of them have been passed in the Senate. Now they're going to go over the House. You hear all kinds of rumors. I know Becky does. I know I do, about what can happen if these end up on the House floor, and how it could potentially really slow the process down in this final month. So we're watching that closely and trying to do everything we can to move our legislative agendas forward. And I will say Becky and I and our group, our lobby group, have been working closely on several issues and moving them forward. So I'll start off going through them rather quickly here. Please, if you've got a question, like it was said earlier, type it in the chat box there, and we'll do our best to answer it. First off is our Senate Bill 219 by Hughes, which is the design defects bill. That passed out of the Senate 29-1. And then Chairman Leach has it in the House. That's House Bill 1418. And that bill went to the House floor. And then Representative Leach asked for it to be postponed. And they're waiting for the Senate bill to catch up to it. And then that thing will continue to move. But at this time, it's moving. One issue that should be near and dear to everybody on this call is the omnibus pandemic bill, which is the business liability insurance protections for it will protect our contractors and businesses. That was with Senator Hancock that ended up getting through the Senate 29-1. And then it was House Bill 3659, which Representative Leach had, and now the bill is on the governor's desk. So basically, that's going to provide you some protections from COVID related suits, and a very, very important bill there. The Uniform General Conditions Bill, the UGC bill for K through 12 building construction, that's Senate Bill 338. Representative Powell has that bill, and it was passed out of the Senate 30-0. And then Representative Lucio has it as House Bill 965. And that bill now it's headed to the Calendars Committee, and expect that it would come out probably sometime next week. That bill basically will give school districts the opportunity to adopt the TFCs, the Texas Facilities Commission's general conditions, which are looked at every 5 years, and a review is done on those. It would also give TASA a seat on the on that oversight, and TASB a seat on that oversight committee. Another important bill, the deductibility of PPP loans for state franchise taxes. If your company had received some of the PPP money when earlier this year, the comptroller's office said that those revenues would be counted against your franchise tax and as revenue. And so that bill now is on the governor's office, on governor's desk, and that will basically say that no, that PPP loan cannot be counted as when you look at franchise tax. So that was an important bill. That was Representative Hancock and Senator Hancock and Representative Guerin. They got on that real quick, and that flew through both houses, and really a good bill for you all. Statute of repose. Every time, it seems like every year we're bringing this up. But this year we seem to have a little bit more traction than ever before. What we're looking at is, and this is with Representative Holland, Justin Holland, it's a House Bill 3069. And based on some negotiations, the bill that's come forward is 8 years plus 1. We currently have a situation where it's 10 years plus 2. So we view that as 12 years of statute of repose. This will bring it down to 9. That would be 8 plus action, then you'd get 1 other. So that is in calendars. I think it was supposed to be popped out either probably today and get out. Tuition revenue bonds, that affects both of us here, both groups. And the I've heard rumors, we've all been hearing rumors that this may be brought up in a special session, because we understand there's going to be a special session on federal monies that are coming to the state. But I also hear that Murphy would still like to get it moving and get that bill going. So I haven't heard any discussion about no way we're not going to get TRBs, but more discussion about, hey, there is a need, and to come out of the COVID situation with a robust plan to address some of the higher ed construction. So that's good. Local preemption on private businesses. That's Senate Bill 14 by Senator Creighton, and it passed the Senate 19-12, and that bill is moving. That's going to limit our local municipalities from moving forward with ordinances that create employer-employee responsibilities like sick leave, mandatory sick leave, prescriptive scheduling, various other items they come up with. But it's still on the move, and I think that thing may just get across the finish line here. It's going to be interesting what happens over the next 2 weeks. The cleanup of court confusion regarding the quantum merit claims against contractors. Representative Schofield has that, and as of yesterday, it still hasn't been heard. So that's hanging on out there. The other bill to close CGL coverage gap for attorney's fees due to the in-roll-out case, and that's House Bill 2416, Gervin Hawkins. That's out of the past the House committee. It was over in calendars, and my understanding it was going to be popped out of calendars this week. So that's an important bill for a lot of attorneys too. So they like to hear that. Lien laws. The lien law bill is with House Bill 2237, changes to modernizing, simplifying the lien law process. That's Representative Burrows, and that bill is expected to come to the House floor next week in anticipation of an amendment that will be put on there. I know that TCA, the Texas Contractors Association, is leading that charge with that bill, and they've let me know that there probably will be an amendment come on there that's come from the Workers Defense Project and Equal Justice Coalition, and it relates to individual laborers' lien rights. So we're keeping an eye on that, but that bill still is moving. Another very important bill, this is TLR's top bill this session, and that's the reform litigation abuse over commercial vehicular accidents. That's all these commercials you see about 16-wheelers, semi trucks crashing into cars and get a big payoff. And it's painted as big trucking industry. But if you have a fleet of automobiles and with your company's name on it, watch out. Just watch out, because there's a group that's coming after you, and they've already started coming after businesses. It's just not semis, it's all businesses that have their cars or trucks logoed. So basically this will rein in some of these abuses that are out there. And you want to keep an eye on this bill, because right now it's in calendars, and that's with Representative Leach. And I think he's still working with certain aspects of the bills with the powers to be to come up with a bill that will be okay to get all the way through. We've done some changing to the construction defects bill on the right to repair, just a cleanup on that, language cleanup. And then the from last sessions, also the contingency lawyers bill on construction defects. There still is a law firm that's going around what we thought was a pretty tight bill, but down in South Texas, they're still approaching school districts and coming up with cases, or so we've got a problem there, and we've got to work around to stop their workaround. So we've got that going. Let's see, there's another one out there using Texas Workforce Commission data as option for determining prevailing wage rates. That passed the Senate. That's just Senate Bill 518 by Senator Colkhorst. Passed the Senate 18-12, and then it's passed with Jeannie Morrison, HB 633. It's passed the out of her committee, so it's still sitting over what I understand in calendars. So, and we played defense on a few bills, but there's a lot of, seems like there's a lot of stuff moving with, if you go to the Capitol, you think, well, is any business being conducted? It's like a ghost town. And, we are all subjected to COVID tests before we can enter the building. Unless you have an immunization card, then you can get your wristband on for the day and then head in. So it is different. There's very few people there. There is a whole bunch of protection around there. I think, Becky, I don't think all of us are used to seeing armed DPS troopers around every corner outside. There's only one entrance to the Capitol now. So we're in a different environment, and but things are still getting done. One bill that's also on the desk, even though Joe mentioned there's just a handful of bills there on his desk, and a couple of them are ours, but one that might be of interest to you is the liquor to go is on the governor's desk, and so we'll see where that goes. The other big issue that's out there boiling up, other than the election laws or voter registration laws, is the constitutional carry law. It got passed out of the House. It went over to the Senate. Senator Patrick has set up a special constitutional issue review committee. So that's where he has placed the constitutional carry bill. And then yesterday you had the governor speak up and say that if it hits my desk, I will sign it. So that is a very controversial piece of legislation that's floating in the Senate. And both those of us who are involved down there know that any controversial piece of legislation can slow the whole process down at the end here. So we're looking at that. As far as I think, there'll be two special sessions, one on the budget and one on redistricting. So it's been quite a session so far for us. It was slow, and then the hammer got slammed down and away we went. And so the budget's done, other than it's in conference. So that's always a big deal. And basically that's all they've got to go by. So, and I think at the end, Joe, if we want to talk about, I can talk about a couple of the Dallas issues that we are working on too, that are of interest to AIA, and Texel members are aware of it, and that's the permitting and also the upcoming election. So thank you all. Thanks for having us here today, and I enjoy weighing in with you guys.
Well, thanks, Jack, and thanks so much for sharing your insight. And yeah, it is a wild environment down at the Capitol right now. But so with that, we'll turn things over to Becky.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Joe. It's really nice to be here with you all again. It was really nice doing this as we geared up early before session and made predictions for how strange this legislative session would be. And here we are to report it's stranger than we could have imagined. I think as we go into each legislative session, we have a list of things that we can kind of identify as what will make this the most difficult session. And then as we get into it, we say, but we really mean it this time. And I think that certainly is one of the things you'll hear echoed from those folks, those of us who are in the ghost town on a daily basis. So I have a lot of the notes that I made to share with you all today echo a lot of what Jack said. We have a number of bills on our priority list that we're supporting, that we're working together with AGC on. We also both have a priority bill that we are on opposite sides of, as Jack mentioned, the liability bill, or sometimes it's referred to design defect bill, HB 1418 and SB 219. We're part of a coalition that's opposing that legislation, and Chairman Leach does have the Senate bill in his committee. We expect to see that move out of his committee in the next several days, and he has postponed the House bill on the floor so that he could substitute out that bill. There are some conversations, I think, ongoing about potential language, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But we are members of a coalition opposing that bill that includes the Frisco Chamber of Commerce, the North Texas Commission, some large owner groups like Texas Oil and Gas Association, the manufacturers, the Chemical Council, and we've recently been joined by the associations for school administrators and school boards. So while we have a lot to talk about that we're working together on, that's certainly something that I know is taking up quite a bit of both mine and Jack's time. So a lot's been talked about the budget, and that one thing that the legislature needs to do every single year that they're in session, constitutionally required to do that, and then every 10 years redistricting. As it's previously been mentioned, the budget is in conference committee. There's just about, a tiny little $4 billion difference between the two bills, and we'll see how they work together to make up the differences there. But some of the things that are in the budget that are always of interest to Texas Society of Architects are those dollars that are allocated for historic preservation. And we see that in the bill again in both chambers. It's a little under 50 million for the biennium in the House bill, and just a little over 50 million for the biennium in the Senate bill. So watching a number of provisions in the budget, but looking at some of historical funding and things like that. Following up our last legislative session and some really what we viewed at the time and what I think we would still call great successes on the litigation reform was the right to repair bill and the government contracting transparency bills, which Jack already mentioned, as well as continuing to work on statute of repose. That government contracting bill and the willingness of those attorneys to go in and amend their current contracts without going before the school board or whatever governmental entity, public body needs to approve those. Tightening that up, I think we're very hopeful that that bill will be successful and will help clarify what we saw as the author's intent last legislative session. So as Jack mentioned, the pandemic liability bill that just passed out of the House committee yesterday. So it's been really fun to watch that bill. I would say that they've put quite a bit of work, that task force that formed early in the pandemic to look at how it was going to impact businesses. did a lot of work in preparation, and a lot of negotiation has gone into that bill. So it's been really interesting to watch the parties of that come together and the lawmakers to work so diligently to kind of resolve a lot of the conflicts and have such an agreed to bill. That doesn't happen very often with this size of piece of legislation. And it's one of those things where sometimes it looks easy, and that's how you know a lot of hard work has gone on behind the scenes. So we also have UGC's Uniform General Conditions for ISDs on our list as well. We're watching that bill and supportive of it. As it relates to public education and school safety, that's a big issue for our members. We've been watching a number of bills related to school safety. But one of the things that we've been working on since last May with TEA are the new facility standards rulemaking that TEA has recently republished. These are provisions that are required as a result of Senate Bill 11, which was passed last session. It was the Omnibus School Safety Bill. And that legislation directed TEA to update and add to their facility standards some safety and security measures for school shootings and other safety emergencies in schools. And so those rules have been republished as of, I believe, the 19th of April, and that comment period closes May 10th. And so we're asking our members who haven't had a chance to review the 27-page document to take the time to do that and to reach out to us as we prepare our comments that we'll make to the agency on behalf of the profession. Our school safety task force met this week and will meet again next week on this issue. And our government affairs steering committee, which meets at a minimum on a monthly basis formally this time of the legislative session, they're looking at that as well. So for you architects who are on and listening and have any comments on that, please reach out to us. TRBs are certainly another thing. Jack covered that nicely. Would really like to see some forward motion there, and any rumors of that being on the call for a special session, we just will cling to those with all our hopes and dreams and just kind of see how that goes. But you talked about some of the things that are keeping it interesting, the liquor to go, constitutional carry. They're hearing constitutional carry in the Senate committee today. I know they have, nearly, I think it was 150, 160 as of the time they started, members of the public there to testify. So, we have the issues that we're working on for you all and lots of other competing interests at that time. I think, Chairman Leach's bill on the trucking issue was on the floor today, and he has a big fight ahead of him. He's been working really hard on that. And I actually can't wait to get off of this Zoom and tune into the House floor to see how that's going. So you mentioned the prevailing wage bill, which would allow the use of Workforce Commission data for setting the wage rate. We're supporting that bill. We're also looking at some bills relating to the historic designation process. That certainly was some legislation that was passed and that was of concern to a number of our members last session. There's another bill that it was introduced on that issue that we're monitoring. That's SB 1585 and HB 1474. The House bill's currently in calendars and the Senate bill's referred to the House committee. I already mentioned UGCs. We just have a number of things related to maintenance, historic preservation, school safety, all of the aftermath of Winter Storm Uri, and watching kind of this pressure that builds at this point. Once we get to May and there's just those first 2 weeks of May, last 2 weeks to move your bills. If they're not in a certain place by May 14th, you're in a heap of trouble. Or if something you don't care for isn't in a certain place, you can have a sigh of relief. But there's this age-old fight between the House and the Senate on each chamber not moving the other's bills, and we're kind of in the middle of that right now. We did see the Senate this morning pass a local calendar that had some House bills on it. We keep kind of looking for signs to read in the tea leaves of when we're going to see some forward motion, because for those of us who have bills we want to move, we want them to get that fight worked out and over with so we can get on down the road. So we look for little signs, but then the Senate adjourned until Monday afternoon. So I'm not sure they've worked all that out yet, but so we saw a week where certainly in the Senate, you didn't see as many bills set, and they're not hearing very many, if any, House bills at this point. And so that just means that next week will be, or late next week or early the following week, will be long hearings with lots and lots of bills on the docket if that dam breaks. So I don't want to go on too far on many of the things that were already touched on. I think you handled a lot of that nicely, Jack. I should have you come and present before me on every panel. We have so much in common in many cases. That would be very helpful to me. So I know we're going to have an opportunity to do questions, and I think that's kind of the best part of doing these panels. So love to kick it back to you, Joe and Katie.
Joe, one thing that I think maybe we've been remiss in not bringing up that we play defense on is the bill that would move bond elections to the general election and move them out of May. I think we were all successful in at least having a representative pull down her bill that addressed that issue. So I think that's one that if you're wondering about, wow, it sounds like, they're moving stuff, but boy, we have to play a lot of defense. And that was a key one. And I know the architects were really pushing their membership base to weigh in on that, as well as we were on our side too. But it always comes up, and I don't know, Becky, if you want to mention that, but I think we were successful that you never know if something might jump up as an amendment. So
yeah. Yeah, we won't count our eggs just yet, count our chickens, however you want to use that, but we keep our fingers crossed and hold our breath that it's where we think it is right now. Sure.
The good news is the legislature is designed to kill bills more than it is to pass them. But you're looking down kind of down the ramp at all the obstacles to get you to sine die to May 31st. So, but you're close.
I think too, if you have a bill that you want to pass, you're certain it's going to die. And if you have a bill you hope does not pass, you're sure it's going to. I think that's just the nature of it.
Well, Joe, do you care if we jump into Q&A, or do you have any other?
No, let's go for it.
Okay. Well, one of the first questions that someone posted in the Q&A, and again, a reminder, feel free to put questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. But a question about, do you have a position on the proposed changes to the hub law, the HUB? Is that on y'all's radar?
I can't.
I'm not sure. There was a bill that Senator West was carrying that really focused on Dallas, the city of Dallas, or our area here. And I'm not sure the current state of that bill. I haven't looked at it here this week.
Well, let's do this. This question came from an anonymous attendee. If you know the bill number or the bill author, if you throw it in the chat or in the Q&A, we can get a little more specifics for your question. We have a handful of questions about our sticky wicket, Senate Bill 219 and House Bill 1418. I guess I think it might be helpful. I know this is kind of the rare bill that puts Texo and AIA on different sides of an issue. But the good news about working through difficult issues with friends is that you can still come out friends on the other side. But it'd be helpful, I think, maybe for folks to understand what it is, Becky, that TXA is most concerned about on the bill. And conversely, Jack, what do you think would be the greatest benefit in passing that legislation for Texo and your member entities? So Becky, maybe I'll kick it to you first.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, for us in this, if Texas, in fact, is an outlier, which they certainly are, by relying on the Supreme Court, Texas Supreme Court Lonergan rule, rather than the other states who use the Spearin doctrine, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. If we are an outlier, one thing that this legislation does that we believe puts Texas even more as an outlier is it eliminates the parties' abilities to contract around that default rule. So we're talking about a default rule when contracts are silent. And what we have wanted in this legislation since 2017, when we first testified in the Senate on this, is an ability for parties to contract. And so we still are seeking that. Quite frankly, I'll share with everyone that both authors of the bill believe that guts the bill. However, we do not see it that way, and we're continuing to advocate for that. I would also mention that as this bill has gone to the House floor or advanced to a floor vote, it has had a provision in it that gets to that unwaivability. So we're looking for language, and we'll continue to push for that.
Yeah, I think on our end, and really it's gotten to the point where I hate to say that our voices are kind of silent in this process, but the process of this sausage making on this bill is happening in the governor's office, is happening between some key players and Chairman Leach. I think that's the main thing that's happening there. And like Becky said, there's the one issue, and basically here we are trying to put it in that we become like the rest of the country, which it's very seldom that we ever line up opposed to one side, but and I think everybody's being respectful of the architectural side of it, their position, and I don't think that most people know, and Becky and I could tell you that, and when they mention the Texas Oil and Gas, really, we understand it's a big player in their group that's really pushing back on it. And both representatives on the Senate, Senator Hughes and Representative Leach, are just, saying, hey, okay, what do you need? How is this going to affect you? So if you look at this and with everybody on the call and the big picture, we have this issue, which oil and gas is pushing against, that Chairman Leach has. And Chairman Leach also has this transportation bill, liability bill. So it gets to be real interesting when all of us, when you're a representative and you have all these different interests and you're trying to just make it even for everybody. It is a very, very, very tough position to have yourself in. And I think both groups are doing a good job of listening to both sides, but in the end, what it's going to come down to is the governor's office is going to make this the end call on this. And so I would encourage you all to, after this session's over, and when your associations ask for you to support your political action committee, you do so, or support those in statewide elected offices to do so, because it's Becky and I, we look at who gives to who and what gives who's given what, and all this in the big picture all goes full circle and comes around. And it's all about access. It's not, getting votes. It's just having access to decision makers. So I think everybody's just going to keep pushing back and staying their course. And, and on the construction side, some people say, hey, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. And contractors will still need to be notifying the owner if they find any defect. This does not create the ability for a contractor just to go, I knew it was a mistake, don't say anything, let's just keep going. And so I think there's some checks and balances there. But Becky, I just think we just got to just keep, we have a lot of respect for one another in this industry. And there just very seldom does it come down to days where, those that you're working with closely, that you come down on different sides. In our case, it used to come down all the time with the Texas Contractor Association with general contractors versus subcontractors. That's gone away. Especially those of you who are Texo members understand that, since we represent the construction association as a whole. But it just does these things just don't happen that often with us. So yeah. I think both Becky and I could probably say we're just looking forward to May 31st and we get this behind us. And you still see us all holding hands and kumbaya, and there's no hard feelings on either way or the other. But when it comes out in the end, you just do what you can. So I hope that's a long, winding road to that answer. But I like everybody to understand that we don't get into knockdown, drag out battles, and nor will we ever talk to one another again, or this side is terrible, that side is terrible. It's just we're trying to remedy a court decision.
I think that's a great answer. And you both are this is the process. This is the legislative process, and you're good people in the mix, and this is what we do. But you're not going to like my next question because it's about what happens after May 31st. I kind of want to explore the rumor mill, kind of do a rumor roundup, if you will, putting aside redistricting, which we know will have to be a special session in the early fall once the U.S. Census data is released and processed. What are the things, though, in the short run that you all are hearing? You mentioned some of them in your previous conversation. I heard, and we know that the House added a budget rider about federal funding, having a special session about the allocation of federal funds. Becky, I think you mentioned TRBs. What are some of the other special session items that are floating around in the rumor mill right now?
Katie, if y'all don't mind, one that I think that we may see is very specific, a special session called on some of the energy issues that we're experiencing. What we're hearing from a lot of our members is, and what Jack, Becky, and I had all kind of talked to earlier on is there was already so much that this legislature needed to focus on headed into this session, and there were so many question marks on how it was going to operate. And then you throw in the events in February and the energy crisis, and there's in a session that was already slow starting, and now you're throwing more and more priority items at them, and the governor's declaring emergency items on this as well. I think we may see a special session on energy. The specifics are still kind of TBD there, but I imagine the governor will call a session to address some of those issues.
I agree with that, and mainly the main reason I agree that I foresee a special session on it is that summer is coming. We got through a terrible winter of 2 weeks of winter. Now summer's coming, and we all know summer lasts a lot longer than that little winter blip. And we have already had one warning, a couple weeks ago from ERCOT to conserve energy. If we get no one wants to see, hey, conserve energy anymore. They don't, the general public does not want to see that brought forth. And that becomes this is more than than just, okay, hey, we need to address it. This is a huge political issue that can vibrate down to the local level and cost people their elections. And you know, this is a very, very scary situation we're in. Joe can tell you, I don't know if most are aware here, you have a Warren Buffett, and his crew has been down to the legislature quite often, held meetings about how they're willing to build 8 power plants, I think it is. I think
Yeah, it's an $8 billion investment for 10 megawatt.
And another one is 10 plants.
Yeah.
So why would these companies come in here and offer that? This becomes a steady stream of revenue into them for lifetimes, and very, very good situation for their stockholders. So that all comes in under the header of a special session on energy, I guess. But you know.
Well, yeah, I'm hopeful that you know, the last, you know, outside of this you know, events that we saw, what was it, a few weeks ago on conserving energy, and you know, I think that was a result of maybe some erroneous forecasting on ERCOT's part, where they took, you know, a number of plants offline for seasonal maintenance. But you know, I'm hopeful. I mean, we have a system in place in Texas where it's built to survive summer in warm temperatures, not so much built to survive, you know, what we saw back in February. I think that's pretty obvious to folks on the line now. But I mean, we've historically enjoyed relatively low energy costs in the state because of the competitive energy only market that we've been operating in. And I think now it's, you know, for the legislature, they need to focus on, well, how do we shore up things like natural gas supply in the state? How do we start to incorporate some of these renewable energy initiatives that we may even see some federal funding, though I don't imagine the governor will have much of an appetite to accept federal funds with some strings attached on renewable energy initiatives. But you know, this is really going to be again an all fuels approach. It's going to take a lot of folks from different sides of these issues to really come together and find a solution for ERCOT in the state of Texas.
That's great. Thanks, y'all. So last session, it feels like we could, you know, paint a broad brush and talk about, last session was a referendum on local control. Has that debate percolated, or is it just really issue by issue this time around?
My view is that they have been distracted by all these other things we've been talking about. And so it's eliminated the ability to kind of push forward on that. It will be interesting, as we talked about, you know, a lot of some of these local control things that are ballot measures this Saturday are also pieces of legislation. And so it'll be very interesting to see if there are any election outcomes that shifts the interest of some of those pieces of legislation on various issues. Or, you know, maybe you have a bill that is related to one thing, but you see a municipality's voters make a decision. Who knows what can happen after Saturday, in my view, as far as rekindling the legislature's concerted interest in that type of deal.
I agree with Becky there, because in the city of Austin, there's the one big issue is the public camping, and you know, if they outlaw it or if they, you know, allow it, so that's there's some big issues in Austin that we don't hear up here in the DFW area, and but legislators hear about them every day on the news down there, and they are experiencing it firsthand, and to see what's going on. And it's it's a delicate situation, what is happening in Austin. And it's an eye-opening situation too.
The city of Austin has got to stop poking the bear right before or during legislative sessions. This is a bad habit that they can't kick.
I am very interested to see how that all shakes out, living here, being a voter here, and being a voter who waited in line for over an hour on the last day of early voting, which is very, surprising in this type of election where I feel like there's not as much typical turnout. So it's fun to watch.
Well, general PSA, if any of you on today's call have not yet voted in your local municipal elections, Saturday is election day, Saturday, May 1st, May 1st, 7 to 7. So make sure you get to the polls. I know Dallas County, it's all vote centers, so you can vote anywhere that voting is taking place. Well, let's see. Any other questions for the group? There's one more here. If y'all could dig in a little more for us about the legislation regarding upskilling, and I just lost it.
Yeah, Katie, I saw that one and asking for some numbers around some of the grant dollars and things like that. I don't have
And their funding uses, if you have that.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we have an excellent educational workforce team at the Dallas Regional Chamber, and I can definitely get some data back to y'all on that.
That's great. I also went ahead and put in the chat the individual who asked a question about the historically underutilized businesses, the two pieces of legislation that he or she are interested in, for the record, were Senate Bill 2002 and House Bill it's not 35.
It's I think 3561.
3561, and both are still in committee and have not had hearings. So at this point, as Jack and Becky and Joe explained at the top, if the bills aren't moving yet, there's not a lot of opportunities remaining to move through the whole process. So I don't feel confident about stranger things have happened, but I don't feel confident about their likelihood to move
And we estimate that during February, during the freeze, there was probably 1,000 to 1,200 bills that were, I hate to use it, but that have been frozen out, that have fallen off the table, that they're not going to see the light of day because the clock is ticking and it's running out, and we're coming up to a crucial time. The one other thing, Katie, that I have to mention that most people on the call are affected by, and just to let you know that as an association, the AIA and Texo, I've even though I'm heavily involved with the legislature, I'm also heavily involved with what's going on locally and with the permitting processes, and they're doing their best at the city to work their way through this, but they've hired two other companies to assist them. They're trying to work through the backlog of residential permits, where it used to take 2 to 3 days, was taking up to 3 months to get a residential permit. Those on the commercial side, with us, that was 4 months to a year. I know a DISD permit had been sitting in there for 14 months waiting, but construction went on. But you see it's become an election issue in the city of Dallas, this permitting process. It's hitting the papers. And that the question I asked here at a meeting with our group not too long ago, as Katie was, I think was, when are the staff going to be back at Jefferson Street, where we've got talking to people face to face? And the answer I got would be 70% staffed by the end of July, and then go from there. And that's direction from the manager's office, city manager's office. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for those that are in charge, that work for the city, with their employees working from home. And our bottom line is we want our permit in a timely manner. There is also legislation that's out there that tightens up the permitting process to, you have to get the permit within 45 days or you don't pay for it. And secondly, the big key to this deal is no municipality can waive that. So that is an issue that the home builders have taken on and on their plate to get through the legislative session. But that will affect each and every one of us here on the call.
And Jack, what's the prospect for that bill, you think?
It's still moving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just heard in the House committee this week. It's Oliverson's HB 4447.
But I will share with you all, I have received quite a few calls from chief building officials. I have a good relationship with a lot of them, and I imagine Zaida has had some calls too that have come into her, but the building officials are quite concerned with it, as well as some of the city manager staff and city attorneys. So it's been kind of interesting. A lot of things on our plate they don't care about, but they're like, what's going on with this? You're trying to do, and I'm like, we're not trying to do it. No, well, we're keeping an eye on the bill.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jack. I know that AIA and Texo and others locally are working really diligently to address the permitting issue, and specifically for AIA and Texo to try and shine a light on the commercial side, because it has taken a back seat to what was, without question, a really big crisis on the residential side. The commercial problems and the permitting office are really have been going on for years, many would say decades. So this is it. The pandemic and the technology challenges have shown a bright spotlight on what is just a percolating crisis in the permit department. I think I appreciate, AIA and Texo and other friends in the industry kind of leaning in hard, participating in the development advisory committee, kind of making that into a more robust committee with that is considered a must go to group from the council and city staff. And we're already starting to see that change a little bit. Like there was a question in front of the economic development committee about street impact fees recently. And the question was asked, have you taken this to the development advisory committee? And so that mentality shift, I think, is really important for the industry, that council will see this committee as functioning and as a must go place. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
Jack, I think you both kind of touched on another issue, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this, but broadband access in the state. The DRC has been out in front on this in support of two bills, primarily moving their way through the legislature, Senate Bill and House Bill 5, and provided written and in-person testimony in favor of both of these bills, but really working to address some of the broadband access issues in the state. And these bills primarily, and I think in the long term too, will provide some opportunities for our construction folks on the line to start getting out there and laying some fiber lines with our utilities providers and others. But these bills would establish a statewide broadband development office and really kind of formalize and develop a statewide broadband plan. So really addressing some of the shortfalls that we're seeing in not only the rural areas, but the urban areas as well. But just wanted to throw that out there. And I believe House Bill 5 passed today in the Senate. So getting some great traction there.
And I think we have one other issue that's affecting our industry that we cannot really do anything legislatively. Becky and I know that for sure, and that is the cost of materials, the materials situation with lumber, metal, and various other components of construction related projects. we're looking for the economy to really just take off. Things seem to be going good, but 2022 looked real bright. But this is, I know it's causing a stress point, and just as for general information, or that AIA and Texo, I think that could be, maybe Charlie can bring that up and you guys can discuss that at a further issue. I think we've kind of run out of time today, so.
I just
Jack,
put
do
out
you-
the last call for questions. If anybody has one last questions. Charlie, you have something to share? You're muted, sir.
Classic, you're muted. We just going to wrap things up here, but we do appreciate everybody's time. Becky, I know you're excited to get back and check out what's going on. So Katie, great to see you again. Joe, thank you so much from your perspective. And Jack, yeah, we'll definitely continue to stay close as to what's happening. And we appreciate your insight. And I know there was a question related to, was this being recorded? And yes, it is. And we'll get with Kathy to make sure that that's posted through the AIA website and Ashland on Texo. So again, thanks everybody for your time. Have a safe day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.